You've been buying the same box of cereal for years. Same brand, same price, same spot on the shelf. But something has changed, and most people haven't noticed yet. That familiar orange box of Wheaties now contains 15.6 ounces instead of the 18 ounces it held just 2 years ago. The price stayed exactly the same. You're paying the same amount for 13% less food, and the company is counting on you never doing the math. This isn't limited to cereal. It's happening across every aisle of every grocery store in America. Products are shrinking while prices hold steady, creating an invisible form of inflation that's quietly draining household budgets. The practice has a name, shrinkflation, and it's accelerating at a pace that should alarm anyone who buys groceries. Walk through a supermarket with the eyes of someone who's been shopping for decades, and the deception becomes obvious. Packages that once felt substantial now seem oddly light. Containers that used to fill your hand completely now leave gaps between your fingers. The visual cues that helped you judge value have been systematically manipulated, and most shoppers are completely unaware it's happening. The numbers tell a stark story. A recent analysis of over 10,000 grocery products found that 22% had undergone package downsizing in the past 3 years while maintaining the same retail price. That represents the largest wave of shrinkflation in American retail history. Companies aren't just trimming a few ounces here and there. They're implementing coordinated strategies to extract more profit per unit while keeping price tags unchanged. Consider what's happened to your morning routine. That sleeve of bagels you grab every week used to contain 6 bagels. Now it contains 5, but the price remained at $3.99. Your coffee creamer bottle looks identical, but it now holds 28 ounces instead of 32. The granola bars you pack for lunch come in boxes of 6 instead of 8. Each change feels minor in isolation, but together they represent a systematic transfer of value from consumers to corporations. The deception runs deeper than simple downsizing. Companies employ teams of packaging engineers and consumer psychologists to make smaller products feel unchanged. They redesign containers to maintain the same visual footprint while reducing volume. They alter packaging textures to feel more substantial. They adjust colors and graphics to distract from size differences. Every element is calculated to preserve the illusion that you're getting the same value you always have. Take the case of toilet paper, a product most Americans buy without thinking twice about. Charmin Ultra Soft, one of the most popular brands, quietly reduced the width of each sheet from 4.5 inches to 4.0 inches in early 2024. The number of sheets per roll remained the same, so the package could still claim 12 mega rolls. But each roll now contains 11% less paper. The price didn't change. Most customers never noticed because the rolls look identical on the shelf. The breakfast aisle tells the same story repeatedly. Honey Nut Cheerios boxes were reduced from 12.25 ounces to 10.8 ounces, while keeping the $4.99 price point. The box was redesigned to appear just as large, with more prominent graphics and extended height to maintain shelf presence. Pop-Tarts boxes went from 8 pastries to 6, but the packaging was reconfigured to preserve the familiar rectangular shape customers expect. Ice cream provides perhaps the most egregious example. What was once a standard half-gallon container, holding 64 ounces, has been steadily reduced over the past decade. First to 56 ounces, then 48 ounces, and now many premium brands contain just 42 ounces. The containers still look substantial because they're designed with thicker walls and more elaborate curves. But you're paying the same price for 35% less ice cream than a decade ago. The shrinkflation trend accelerated dramatically during the COVID-19 pandemic as companies faced rising costs for raw materials, labor, and transportation. Rather than raise prices and risk customer pushback, most chose to reduce product sizes. The strategy worked because consumers were dealing with so much disruption that subtle package changes went unnoticed. What began as a pandemic survival tactic has now become standard operating procedure. Cookie packages illustrate how sophisticated these changes have become. Oreos, America's favorite cookie, reduced their family-size packages from 19.1 ounces to 17.6 ounces. The package was redesigned with more prominent branding and brighter colors to maintain visual impact. The number of cookies per package dropped from approximately 45 to 42, but the 3-row arrangement was preserved so the change isn't immediately obvious to casual buyers. Laundry detergent represents another category where shrinkflation has been particularly aggressive. Tide liquid detergent bottles that once contained 100 ounces now hold 92 ounces. But the bottles were redesigned with a more ergonomic shape that actually feels larger in your hands. The concentration was supposedly increased, allowing for smaller doses per load, but independent testing shows the effective cleaning power per dollar has decreased by roughly 8%. The psychological manipulation extends to how products are displayed and marketed. Companies now emphasize metrics that sound more generous while obscuring the actual quantity. Snack foods are marketed by piece count rather than weight. Now, with 20% more, claims become common, but they're referring to 20% more than the company's own reduced size version from the previous year, not 20% more than the original full-size product. Paper towels showcase this deceptive marketing perfectly. Bounty paper towels reduced their sheet size by 8%, but increased the number of sheets per roll by 5%. The package now claims more sheets than ever, while actually containing less total paper towel material. The price remained unchanged, so consumers are paying the same amount for less absorbent capacity. But the marketing message suggests they're getting a better deal. Candy bars have undergone some of the most dramatic shrinkage in the grocery industry. A standard Snickers bar, which weighed 2.16 ounces in the 1980s, now weighs 1.86 ounces. That's a 14% reduction over 4 decades, but prices have increased by over 300% during the same period. Today's candy bar is smaller and significantly more expensive, representing a compound erosion of value that totals nearly 400%. The meat department hasn't escaped this trend. Ground beef packages that were once exactly 1 pound now commonly weigh 14 ounces or 12 ounces, while maintaining similar pricing per package. The per pound price appears unchanged on shelf tags, but consumers buying by the package are paying significantly more per ounce. Bacon packages have similarly shrunk from 16 ounces to 12 ounces in many cases, while the package design maintains the visual impression of a full pound. Canned goods present their own version of shrinkflation. Campbell's soup cans were reduced from 10.75 ounces to 10.5 ounces, then to 10.25 ounces over a period of 3 years. Each reduction was accompanied by packaging redesigns that maintained the familiar visual proportions. Tuna fish cans, once a standard 6 ounces, now commonly contain 5 ounces, or even 4.5 ounces, while keeping the same general size and shape. The beverage industry has been particularly creative with shrinkflation tactics. Tropicana orange juice containers were reduced from 64 ounces to 52 ounces, but the new container shape was designed to fit the same shelf space and feel similarly substantial when carried. Arizona iced tea, long famous for its 99-cent price point, maintained that price by reducing can sizes from 23 ounces to 20 ounces, then introducing tall can formats that contain even less liquid while appearing larger. Frozen foods represent another category where shrinkflation has been widespread but subtle. Frozen pizza diameters have been reduced by an average of 8% across major brands, while package imagery makes the pizzas appear unchanged. Frozen dinner entrees have seen portion sizes cut by 10-15% on average, but the packaging has been redesigned with compartments that make the smaller portions appear more substantial. The personal care aisle tells the same story. Shampoo bottles that once contained 15 ounces now hold 12.6 ounces, but the bottle shape was modified to maintain the same height and visual presence. Toothpaste tubes were reduced from 6 ounces to 5.1 ounces, with packaging changes that make the tubes appear unchanged. Deodorant sticks lost approximately 10% of their weight across major brands, while maintaining identical packaging dimensions. What makes shrinkflation particularly insidious is how it affects household budgeting. Families that carefully track their grocery spending often notice their bills increasing without understanding why. They're buying the same products at the same prices, but they're running out of food faster and shopping more frequently. The hidden cost compounds over time, effectively functioning as a stealth tax on everyday necessities. The impact disproportionately affects lower-income households, which spend a higher percentage of their income on consumer goods and have less flexibility to absorb price increases. A family spending $150 per week on groceries might not notice an extra $5 or $10 in weekly costs, but a family spending $75 per week definitely feels that same increase. Shrinkflation effectively makes basic necessities less accessible to those who can least afford the reduction in value. Senior citizens represent another vulnerable population. Fixed incomes make them particularly sensitive to any increase in the real cost of living, even when it's disguised as shrinkflation rather than direct price increases. Many elderly shoppers have been purchasing the same products for decades and notice changes more readily than younger consumers, but they often lack alternatives or the energy to seek better values elsewhere. The restaurant industry has implemented its own version of shrinkflation. Fast food chains have reduced portion sizes while maintaining menu prices, often by using smaller containers or reducing the amount of filling in sandwiches. Subway's foot-long sandwiches have faced multiple class action lawsuits over concerns that they were actually 11 inches or shorter, highlighting how even slight reductions can become significant when scaled across millions of transactions. Coffee shops provide another clear example. Starbucks' tall size, once 12 ounces, is now effectively 11 ounces when accounting for increased ice ratios and cup design changes. The grande size has similarly been reduced through design modifications that maintain the visual appearance while reducing actual liquid volume. Customers pay the same prices while receiving measurably less product. The psychological aspect of shrinkflation extends to how consumers process and remember product sizes. Research shows that people are much better at noticing price increases than they are at detecting size decreases. A 10% price increase triggers immediate awareness and potential resistance, while a 10% size decrease often goes unnoticed for months or years. Companies exploit this cognitive bias systematically. Quality degradation often accompanies size reduction, creating a double impact on value. Products don't just become smaller, they often become less satisfying or less effective. Cheaper ingredients are substituted to maintain profit margins on the reduced size packages. The result is that consumers pay the same amount for less of an inferior product, though the decline in quality is gradual enough to avoid immediate backlash. Some companies have begun to reverse course on shrinkflation, but usually only after significant customer complaints or negative publicity. When customers began noticing and complaining about smaller sizes on social media, a few brands returned to larger portions. However, these reversals are typically accompanied by price increases that more than offset the additional product, meaning consumers end up paying more overall for the original size they used to receive at a lower price. The regulatory environment around shrinkflation remains largely ineffective. While companies are required to list product weights and volumes on packaging, there are no requirements to notify consumers when sizes change. Unit pricing, which shows cost per ounce or per pound, can help informed shoppers identify the best values, but many retailers don't display this information prominently, and many consumers don't use it even when it's available. International comparisons reveal that shrinkflation is not unique to American markets, but it appears to be more prevalent and aggressive in the United States than in many other developed countries. European regulations often require more prominent disclosure of product changes, and consumer advocacy groups in some countries have successfully pressured companies to maintain standard sizes or clearly communicate changes. The long-term implications of widespread shrinkflation extend beyond individual household budgets. It represents a fundamental shift in the relationship between producers and consumers, where traditional notions of value and fair dealing are being systematically eroded. The practice normalizes deception in marketing and pricing, potentially undermining consumer trust in retail markets more broadly. Economic data suggests that shrinkflation may be masking the true rate of inflation in consumer goods. Official price indices, which track the cost of a standard basket of goods, often fail to account for quality and size changes over time. If products are getting smaller while prices remain stable, the effective rate of inflation is higher than what appears in economic statistics, which could have implications for monetary policy and economic planning. The future of shrinkflation likely depends on consumer awareness and response. As more shoppers become conscious of size reductions and factor them into their purchasing decisions, companies may be forced to compete more honestly on value, rather than relying on packaging tricks and psychological manipulation. Social media has accelerated the spread of information about product changes, making it harder for companies to implement shrinkflation without notice. However, the fundamental economic pressures that drive shrinkflation haven't disappeared. Rising costs for materials, labor, energy, and transportation continue to squeeze profit margins. Companies face a choice between raising prices explicitly or reducing product sizes while maintaining prices. Historical evidence suggests that most will continue choosing the latter option as long as consumers tolerate it. The most effective consumer response to shrinkflation involves developing better awareness of actual product sizes and unit costs, rather than relying on package appearance or familiar price points. Shopping with a calculator or smartphone app that tracks unit prices can help identify genuine value. Buying larger package sizes often provides better value per unit, though this requires more upfront spending and storage space. Store brands and generic products often provide better value stability than name brands during periods of widespread shrinkflation. Private label manufacturers typically compete more directly on price and size rather than brand recognition, making them less likely to engage in deceptive sizing practices. However, as shrinkflation becomes more widespread, even generic products are beginning to participate in the trend. The story of shrinkflation in American grocery stores is ultimately a story about power and information asymmetry. Companies have teams of experts dedicated to maximizing profits through packaging psychology and size manipulation. Consumers have their own experience and intuition, but these are systematically undermined by sophisticated deception. The result is a marketplace where the traditional assumption that businesses compete honestly on value is no longer reliable. Understanding shrinkflation requires recognizing that it's not just about getting less product for the same money. It's about a fundamental change in how commerce operates, where the appearance of stability masks constant erosion of value. The 20 products most affected by this trend represent just the visible tip of a much larger phenomenon that touches virtually every consumer good Americans buy. The question facing consumers now isn't whether shrinkflation will continue, but whether they'll develop the awareness and habits necessary to navigate a marketplace where traditional signals of value have been systematically compromised. In a world where package sizes change constantly while prices remain superficially stable, the ability to see through the deception becomes an essential survival skill for anyone trying to maintain their standard of living on a fixed budget. The next time you reach for that familiar product on the grocery shelf, take a moment to check the actual size listed on the package. Compare it to your memory of what you used to receive. The difference might be smaller than you expect, but when multiplied across everything you buy and everyone who shops, it represents one of the largest transfers of wealth from consumers to corporations in modern retail history. And it's happening right before your eyes, one shrinking package at a time.